All right, so good morning, everybody. I am Louise, and I will be your facilitator this morning. Salamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak, and Ahlan Masahlan, which Salamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Ramadan is happening right now, and Ahlan Masahlan just means welcome. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of '93. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating fellow human beings of all colors with love and respect. Join us. Land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that what we know as the US is the traditional territory of the indigenous peoples. Members of our group today are on the Tonkawan, Lipan Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Chitimacha in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Lenape and Piscataway in Maryland, and the Wampanoag and Nipmuc people in Boston. I want to thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and hope that we can continue this stewardship in the future. So a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'll get to introduce everybody to introduce themselves. For those of you who don't know, I want everyone to stay on mute. It makes it go a little bit smoother if everyone stays on mute, unless they are speaking, obviously. If you want to be on the list, you raise one finger, shake it all about, let me know that that I can see you, and I'll put your name on the list. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and there will be no interruptions or personal attacks. The point of these meetings is to listen and learn and not to attack. If by the time that person has finished speaking, you have a clarifying question, of which there will be 2 clarifying questions only, you raise 2 fingers. Again, shake them about a little bit. And a clarifying question is, I didn't understand what you meant by, so it's not really a rebuttal or a monologue or a chance for you to speak against what they just said. If that is the case, then get on the list. So it has to be just a question. I guess we'll go to the introductions, and then, at the end, if you haven't spoken at all during the meeting, you will get 2 minutes at the end of the meeting. You can pass, of course, you do not have to speak. Everyone else who has spoken will get a wrap up of 1 minute each. So let's do the introductions first. And again, I'll go through what I see when Phyllis is the first person.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to see what comes out of this conversation. And I've been I'm in New Orleans. I've been coming to Erace since 2008.
Marion.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marion Lagarde. I live in New Orleans in an area of the city called Gentilly. And I've been attending the Erace discussions since June of 1993. So very glad to see everyone this morning. Looking forward to the discussion.
We're glad to see you. Nora.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora. I'm in Austin. I've been coming under a year, and I got here as fast as I could. Nice to see everybody.
Good way of putting it. Dee Dee.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee, and I'm in Southern California. And I've been attending since probably the latter part of last year. I started out in the Erace group that's focused out of Atlanta, but I'm finding that I'm more comfortable in this group. And so I like coming here. And so there we are, you're stuck with me. No.
We're glad to have you. Martha.
My name is Martha. I'm a retired registered nurse for the 3 years, and I live in New Orleans, and I've been attending Erace post-Katrina when I moved to New Orleans after being misplaced for 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Moore. I've been attending Erace since June of 2007, and I'm located in New Orleans.
Cindy.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Morse. I think we've been coming about 4 years, not sure. I remember hearing about it many years ago when I was teaching full time, and Saturday morning, oh, there's no way. So I regret I wasn't part of it then. I'm in New Orleans. Thanks.
Bill.
I'm Bill Ives, and I am happily married to Cindy Morse. And I learn something every time. I wanted to ask Louise a question. Where do you find out, where do you do the research for the indigenous people of different locations?
Oh, you know, the glory of Google, mate. You just literally say, what are the indigenous tribes of a certain area? And they pop up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, of course.
I'd like to say that I spent hours and hours researching the subject. That's not the case, sorry.
I love that you're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm glad too. It really does put something in your mind every day, you know, when you hear it. Pedro.
Hey, good morning. I've been with the race over a year, and I'm involved in an institute on addiction, health, and social theory, and that tries to deconstruct those sources of misery that are created by other human beings. And in that vein, this group and the information on racism and such has been so helpful to develop new insights. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Larry.
Good morning, I'm Larry. I'm in New Orleans. I've started out with Erace back in the mid-90s, and I'm happy to be here this morning.
Thank you. Michelle.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Michelle, and I'm in Austin. I've been coming to Erace since the end of summer 2020, I believe. So brought here by Louise. Happy to be helping her facilitate this morning. Happy to see her doing that. So thank you, Louise.
Thank you. Marion. No.
I think I introduced myself, didn't I?
Did you? Oh my God, I'm sorry. There you go.
Oh, Michelle is saying no. I distinctly remember saying I've been attending the discussion since 1990.
You did. You did.
You did.
Okay. Strike one for the
Don't
Strike
scare
two
me
for
like
me.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking I'm
Cheryl.
going off the deep end here.
Cheryl.
Good morning, Cheryl Miller in New Orleans, Bulbancha territory. I have been coming and was introduced just before Katrina and just found you all during COVID when it went to Zoom land. So very happy to be here. Very interesting subject. And it's typical with me, I'll be turning my screen off and listening to this incredible subject while I do my Saturday morning. Thank you for letting me be here.
You're welcome, of course. Francie.
I'm Francie Manning. I'm Michelle's mom. And so I was introduced through her to this group. And then, of course, from that was Louise. So I feel a connection to Louise too. And I'm in Austin, of course, since I'm related to these people. I do want to say, Louise, that the Austin Climate Equity Plan has a fairly extensive listing of all the indigenous people around Austin that you might find interesting.
I would find it interesting, but I do have to cut them down because there are so many different
sure.
tribes in the area, and I'm mentioning so many different areas now that, you know, get a little inundated with how many different tribes and peoples there were. But thank you. Yeah, I will be interested in that. I think that was everybody. So I'll very briefly tell you why I bought this.
Glenn, did you
Article.
let Glenn introduce himself?
Was Glenn here? I didn't see Glenn. Did he just turn up?
He's in, yeah.
Where? Okay, so you might need to help me with that because I can't see him on my screen at all.
In the top right corner of your screen, do you see a little view and then a bunch of
should I
little
do-
tiny squares? Click on that, and I think it'll give you maybe different options, or are you already on the gallery view?
No, I'm on the gallery view, but
I
there you
can
are.
see, I see Lynn.
I'm sorry. Okay, Glenn, introduce yourself, please.
Peace be unto everyone. Name is Glenn Abdullah. Been coming since 1994, and I enjoy each meeting that I'm in. It's always interesting. So I hope looking forward to the one today. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I didn't see you. I can see you now. That was not purposeful. So my father is Egyptian. I was raised as a Muslim in London. He is very light-skinned. My mother is of Irish descent, so we obviously pass as white. And whenever we have to click, your race on one of those choices, they never have North African or they've changed it a little bit now. I have to admit things are changing, but I never found one that was suitable to my race. So I would always have to put white, and I don't know, it just didn't sit properly with me. And also Islamophobia, of course, is a thing now, and I guess it's always has been because we were victims of racism in England. So I want to throw that one out there too. Is Islamophobia racism? What does, so I think there is a discussion to be had from this, and I'm gonna open the floor to people who want to get on the list. So let me know if you want to get on the list. Nancy? Oh, do you know what? I didn't say one thing. I'll just say, so if I do see you waving your finger, I'm going to hopefully quietly say your name and you'll be on the list. So I'll be doing that. I hope that's not too distracting to you if you're speaking.
I'll let you know, Louise, that Glenn's raising his hand. I don't know if you can see him now.
I still can't see him, no. Okay, yes, thank you for that. Okay, so I've got Nancy.
Louise, do you see a box with a G in it? Just the letter G?
No, and I've always had problems with this computer. We've had limited functions that I can do when we were doing the school, online. There were things that I was missing. So I think, yes, I don't have the full set of tools that y'all have, I'm afraid. So you might have to help me with Greer and Glenn.
You've gone through all the settings when you're in Zoom, like the Zoom administrative,
yes.
and you've not been able to pull up, because I know that's another thing. You can ask it to show you more tiles per screen in a different. But you have to be in the Zoom settings to do that.
Yep, it's not. It doesn't let me.
Okay, well, I'll try it. I guess since Glenn's the only one that's not on your screen, I think you're seeing everybody else. I'll try and when Glenn's.
Absolutely. We'll see how that goes. So Nancy is the only person so far. Anyone else?
Nancy and Glenn, yeah.
Glenn had his hand raised, and now Cindy has her hand raised.
I can see Cindy. Okay, good. Anyone else? No, let's go with Nancy. Oh, Larry, I got you.
I just wanted to bring up a story when I was in the 5th grade. And I was in Miss Green's class, and they were teaching us geography. And Miss Green and I got into a discussion, which ended up with a note being sent home about talking back to the teacher, that she told us that Egypt was not in Africa. And we're looking at a map, and to me, very clearly, it's in Africa. And so if it's not in Africa, where is, it's in Asia. And I was like, no, No, it's in, I mean, it's part of the African continent. All right. She clear, well, then of course I was talking back and being disrespectful and disputing her. This is back in the 60s. So, very different times. Children weren't supposed to, I see you, Marva. Children weren't supposed to dispute or talk back to the teacher or what have you and whatnot. But I think from whatever she learned or whatever mindset she had, that might be part of, if at that time, Egypt was not considered part of Africa. It might have something to do with these classifications of how people are classified. Okay, and as the article said, people from other countries, when they emigrate here, they find out very quickly the closer you can be to being white, the easier your life will be. Even though the reality of it is not exactly so. Yes, Marva?
Was your teacher white?
No, she's Black.
Oh, because I've had that same problem distinguishing Egypt from Africa, and I'm much older than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think at that time they wanted Egypt because they probably wanted to associate that culture of Egypt could not be part of Africa, because Africa was backwards and they were still wearing grass skirts and living in huts and stuff like that. They did not want this advanced, sophisticated culture of Egypt to be part of Africa. And so she went on and perpetuated that instead of kind of stopping and thinking, well, yeah, it is kind of sitting up there in the northeast corner. How can it not be part of Africa?
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
What I find out, you can have yourself down as white in America, but you still will be discriminated. They had a young lady that was from Yugoslavia. She had blonde hair and very light green eyes, almost looked like a mustard color. And she told us how she was discriminated against. When she was in school, they would look at her as a white person, but when she opened her mouth and that accent came out, people would discriminate against her. I've been, by being a Muslim myself, you become universal because Islam is in every race of people. And I would notice how Arabs would get discriminated against, and other people who they're saying are white, but they're not white enough. And then their accent and their and texture of hair will make Americans discriminate. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Glenn. Cindy.
She's not there. Bill's unmuted. Not Bill, you're muted.
Bill, what have you done with Cindy?
Cindy, you disappeared from the screen. I'll be right back.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll switcheroo and we'll have Larry and then we'll get back to Cindy, okay? So Larry.
Okay, thank you. The subject is the U.S. Census sees Middle Eastern and North African people as white. The question is, why?
Right.
Then the other question is, who's in control of the census? So when we talk about black and white and Republican and Democrat, liberal, conservative, we're still dealing with the deception of race, the deception of race. And we know that race and subsequently what is often addressed as racism is a relatively modern concept invented in the 17th century as a means for justifying the enslavement of Africans in colonial America. Race cannot be biologically real, but we keep talking about race. It's a concept that has evolved into a system that we have come to call racism. And this system, as we know it in the US, was created to preserve the purity of the so-called white race and relegate them to the top of the social order and relegate those of darker skin to the bottom of the social order. And it is understandable then why those from other countries who come to America may seek to identify with the so-called white race, because the white race is systematically in control of the sources of power in this country. And that is economic power, political power, and military power. And it is not by accident that the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag has a part that says, "One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." That was not by accident. And so when they say one nation, a nation is a people, a nation is not a country. And so when it said one nation under God, it was talking about the white people.
Larry, do you want to get back on the list?
Oh, my time is up. I'm sorry. I
Yes,
didn't hear
it
it
went
go.
a little while ago, but I'll let you go just because we
Okay.
don't have many people on the list. But do you want to get back on?
Yes, I'm sorry.
All right, sir.
Yes.
Got it. Cindy, are you ready?
Mm-mm.
You're
I
muted.
keep getting that backwards. I apologize. There was a crisis outside. It was not, it turned out, but I needed to check on it. I went to the dictionary because this has long been a debate, the difference between ethnicity and race. And according to the dictionary, they're almost the same thing. Over about a group of people with related by race or nationality. A large group of people, plants, or animals that have similar physical traits and common heredity with common characteristics. I think the amount of energy this country has put, or members of this country have put into arguing about race and who is which and who is which ethnicity is so sad that we have done this for a long, long time, centuries. We still can't agree on it. Why does it matter? Accept people as people. They may not live close to you, maybe in California like Dee Dee, or Becky's not here, but Boston. You know, we can cover the country. We are all human beings, and arguing about or worrying about or caring about or getting upset about race or ethnicity is a waste of our energy. I'd love to see us put it away. Enough said.
Thank you, Cindy. Larry, I'm so sorry to have cut you off before. You want to continue?
Did you get my message, Amal?
Oh, and we have Amal. Sorry, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And
But
Bill.
you know, when Cindy said why we can't agree to it, you know, we can't because again, it's a concept. It's not biologically or anthropologically sound. And so we'll never agree relative to race because it's a socially constructed concept. And, you know, I ended with the Pledge of Allegiance saying one nation under God. And I stated that how a nation is not a country. So when it said one nation under God, they were talking about the so-called white nation. So I think what we're dealing with in America is what Isabel Wilkerson described in her book by the same title, Caste. And we're dealing with a caste system in America, and a system that at its core is equal to the South African system of apartheid and the Indian caste system. Did it go off again?
Yeah, do you want to
No,
get?
it didn't. That's,
didn't?
it's still going.
Oh, that was weird. Okay.
Okay. And you know, and by dealing with the caste system, some people have been relegated to the class of untouchables. But we didn't historically label people as untouchables because it would have put shame to our so-called democracy. And so we've been living with this hypocrisy of democracy for some 200, if not 400 years. And with the caste system comes privileges. And that's how we get the so-called white privileges. But we're dealing with the privileges of the caste system. And I think if we could break down this race construct, we can begin to heal America. But until then, we can't. Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you, Larry. Amal. Good timing.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh man, it's good to see Larry. I hadn't seen him in so long. What's happening, man? It's so
amen.
I think that, you know, there's a saying that nobody wants to be black, even black people. And
Nancy had her hand up. Excuse me.
I'm
and
sorry.
so these people that we're calling, quote, Middle Eastern and North African, first and foremost, those people in North Africa are not Africans. Those are Arabs. They're not African people. They just came and never left. No different from the white people in South Africa that's there. They just came and they never left. They're not African. So they're European. So I'm not surprised that the people in North Africa wants to, not them wanting to identify as white, but white people are identifying them as white, because whenever European numbers start to dwindle, they need to add somebody to their system. So if you remember, there was a time when Jews, Irish, and Italians weren't considered white in the United States. But how did they get boosted to whiteness? When white people's numbers started to dwindle. If you're not, because there was a time, if you wasn't a WASP, and a WASP is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, I don't care where else in Europe you came from, you weren't considered white in the United States, i.e. Irish, i.e. Italians, i.e. Jews. So whenever their numbers start to dwindle, they need a boost in numbers. They'll add other groups who weren't historically considered white to the white category. And that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing people from North Africa and the Middle East being added to the category because white people, European numbers are dwindling on the planet. And they need to add some people to their numbers so that they can have numbers to fight people who outnumber them.
All right, thank you, Amal. Phil. And Larry, I got you.
Did you get Francie?
Yes. Yeah.
First of all, I was thinking exactly along the lines that Larry said. It reminds, reading this article, it first reminded me of apartheid and how ridiculous, because the difference is the evil in apartheid is not necessarily recognizing the ethnicity or the race of people, but the fact that there's consequences if you're the wrong race. And, you know, sometimes people say we should just do away with the concept of race. But then if we do away from that, we're taking people's heritage away from them. And so we need to do away the concept of racism, but not race. Because I think, personally, I find people of different backgrounds really interesting. We went to a Ramadan dinner once after Trump was elected. Cindy organized a group of women, and they decided they want to start meeting with a group of Muslim women. And there was quite a few Muslim women in our neighborhood, mostly because their husbands were graduate students at Tulane. And so we somehow need to get a spin But humans are terrible at this. I had an ancestor who came to this country as a Puritan to escape religious persecution. What did the Puritans do in New England? In order to vote, you had to be Puritan. So they came to this country to escape persecution, and then they applied persecution to anyone who wasn't them. It's crazy.
Thank you, Bill. Do you want to get back on?
I'll listen for a while. Thank you.
Okay, then Francie, you're next.
Well, I'm kind of tracking behind Bill on what he's pointing out about heritage, except my problem with race is using that term is that somehow it implies there's something biologically different about us and among us, which I believe is incorrect. There isn't any real discernible biological difference. So you can't attribute certain traits to a person because of the color of their skin if we could get rid of that word race. I prefer ethnicity, but I don't know that using that word would keep everyone from transferring their prejudices over to that word as well. But the thing I got from the article, Louise, was when we track people on a census, sort of by where their origins are, we can better understand health and longevity and those kinds of things about growing up in a certain area of the globe, eating certain kinds of foods, those things that dietitians love to tell us about how we can control our body image and our longevity. So whether that's a legitimate scientific tracking or not, how would we do that if we don't have some kind of distinction? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I did pick that up in the article.
Thank you, Francie. Larry.
You know, as a Christian, we always taught and teach to have hope. And you know, hope is something that I believe in less and less as it relates to America's racial problem. You know, I have hope of glory, but I see America's quote unquote racial problem getting worse and not better. I think it goes back to this, again, this false concept of race, which is actually a caste system in America. We don't want to call it a caste because we are supposed to be the world's #1 democracy. So we call it something else. And when we look at slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, lynching, the educational system, the housing discrimination, job discrimination, all those things were designed to keep the caste system in place, which is to control, the power control of economic, politics, and military. You control those three things, you can subjugate any people, you know? And so what America has been dealing with over these years is evil. You know, again, we don't want to call it evil, but it has been evil. Morality versus immorality, good versus bad, right versus wrong. And the things we have been dealing with in America, they are just evil. They're wrong. They're man's inhumanity to man. And that is why Whoopi Goldberg got into so much trouble, because she really hit the nail on the hand, you know, as related to Hitler. We're dealing with man's inhumanity to man. We're not dealing with Ukraine as a country. We're dealing with man's inhumanity to man. But those things, when we keep this false concept of race in there, okay, that's it. I'll come back.
You want to be put back on?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Phyllis.
Wasn't Nancy on the list before me?
No, no.
Okay.
Well,
I must have
She
misheard.
shook her head. No, she shook her head. No.
yeah.
It was
Um,
Fran. That was a while ago.
Oh, maybe that was what I heard.
Yeah.
So I just want to say at the, I don't know, third page of the article, maybe, where it talks about people, the research that was done, not necessarily census taking, where people had the option to choose the MENA category, Middle Eastern or North African or white, and 88% of the people with MENA descent chose Middle Eastern or North African as their category and not white. And that also people who did not identify as MENA or Latino, but did identify as white, also chose those people as not white. So I think it's a lot of people believe that any immigrant who comes here wants to try to be as white as quickly as possible. But that's not always true. And Louise herself is an example of that. She did not like being categorized as white. A lot of these places had colonization from European countries that were white people, and probably don't have a lot of good feelings about being categorized as white because those were their oppressors. And, you know, I think maybe culture is the word that we need to use in terms of, you know, and that breaks it down even more because in any country, there are lots of cultures. And that to me is what makes our country interesting, that we have so many cultures here that we can learn from and eat the food of and learn more about them through their food. So I think, you know, not everybody who comes here wants to be white. I think everybody just doesn't want to be oppressed. Thanks. And Amal's hand is up.
Oh, okay. So Larry and then Amal.
Okay, and you're right, Phyllis. Everybody who come here don't want to be white, but they want to be a part of the upper echelon of society. So they identify with white. They don't identify with blacks because blacks are the untouchables. And then I go back to this thing called the Stockholm syndrome, you know, where even, and I think if you remember Patty Hearst, I think that was a degree of psychological persuasion there where she eventually identified with her captors. And sometimes in the Stockholm syndrome, you had slaves identifying with their captors because and people now, you know, a lot of times they identify with the upper echelons of a society. And you have sometimes blacks in America that sometimes it's not about race. They want to ascend up the economic and political ladder. So they identify with those at the top. How else can a Tim Scott, as black as he is, vote against this most qualified black woman to be on the Supreme Court because Tim Scott agreed with his captors and he didn't want to upset the caste system in America. So he sold his own soul to the devil in order that he could remain in that caste system. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Amal.
Yeah, well put. Also, you have to realize something, Phyllis, is that even though those people who come to this country don't want to identify as white, they do everything in their power to not identify as black. And I'm talking about other black people. I'm talking about black people from other parts of the world, like Nigeria and Ghana and Jamaica and Haiti. They'll quickly tell you, I'm not African American. They'll be very quick to tell you that. And what they're telling you is that I'm not part of that lower class system that Larry was talking about that you subjugate every day. And particularly people from different parts of Africa, they'll be quick to tell you I'm not African American. What they're telling you is that I'm not a descendant of slaves. I'm not them. And so it's not about not identifying as white a lot of times. It's mostly to not be identified.
Oh, sorry, Nancy.
It's mostly to not be identified as Black, from wherever part of the world you may come from. But there's a gentleman that I suggest people look up. His name is Mustafa Hefni. Mustafa Hefni is Egyptian, but he's an Egyptian that looks more like me rather than the Arabs that are in Egypt right now. And so if you go back, if you look at him when he came to the United States and he was telling the United States government that he was Black, they said, no, you're white, you're from Egypt. Now the man is, I'm gonna say about Larry's complexion, but he has an afro bigger than mine. And the United States government was telling him he's white. His name is Mustafa Hefni. Look him up. And when you see him, if you didn't know his name and he was just walking down the streets of New Orleans, he looked like somebody from uptown. For those people who from New Orleans, not everybody.
Okay. Clarifying question from Phyllis for you, Amal.
Can you spell his last name? Sorry, it's not a very challenging question.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's okay. Let me spell it for you right now. It's Hefni. It's spelled, and I may have been pronouncing it wrong, but it's Hefny.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mustafa Hefni.
Sorry, Bill is up next.
I'm pessimistic about racism in this country because the whites don't want to give up their white privilege, most of them. And and because of that, this whole thing about trying to be white, it means trying to be, as Larry said, in the upper caste. And we had an article a while back, I think Nancy provided it, about Asian women and using their Chinese name rather than their anglicized name. They originally wanted to use their anglicized name to be more white. And then they had a reaction against that because they were denying their heritage. So that's a two-edged sword here. Do you strive for white privilege in the upper class, or do you strive for your heritage? And as long as we have a negative connotation about certain heritages, we're going to be in trouble. And I wish, and maybe it's built into people, and like the example I did of the Puritans who came to this America to escape religious persecution and then applied religious persecution to ones that weren't Puritans. So it's a sad commentary, because I think we should celebrate heritage and celebrate different heritages, because we can learn from the diversity. And maybe people are afraid of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Nancy.
Yes, I just want to piggyback on what Amal said about Africans. When they come to this country, they very quickly realize that they do not want to be assumed to be African Americans, and they do not want to be classified as what they call us as cotton pickers. They do not want to be assumed to be a cotton picker. And when Christina Greer was here, remember she talked about how, just as Bill described, that initially when Africans came here, they wanted to assimilate into the country, so they got rid of their African names and took on American, anglicized, like first names, okay? Like William and John and Mary, and very basic. But then they realized that if they did that, then they were assumed to be, more identified with being African American. So they stopped doing that, and now they keep their African names so that you know that they are not African American. There is no way that they are African American. They want to be from Nigeria or Ghana or Lagos or whatever, Ethiopia, whatever country that they are originally from. That's where they're from. They want to separate themselves from being African American. That's it.
Thank you, Nancy. Larry.
When Bill mentioned about the Asian women who wanted to change their names to appear more English, I guess, American, that brought me into remembrance of the name Isor Danielovich, who changed his name because he didn't want to appear to be too Jewish. And you may not know him by that name, but you know him by the name of Kirk Douglas and his son Michael Douglas. But he felt it would be to his advantage if he would change his name and not sound too Jewish. But we unless we're looking at America through the right eyes or through the right set of lens, we don't realize the danger that we're in. And I saw a picture on Animal Kingdom one time, and there were two rams. You know how rams butt heads with one another? And they were so busy butting heads that they didn't see the lion who was sneaking in to take away the baby lion. And that is where we are in America now. Putin has done what Putin has done partly because he sees the division in America. And he knows that there's a certain part of America who supports him and what he's doing. And all we got to do is keep on going down the road that we're going, and we won't be no more. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Glenn next. And I've got you, Pedro. I've already got you down. Glenn? Is he there?
Yeah, he's still on mute, so I don't know if you can see him or not, Louise.
No, I can't see him, but can he hear me? Do you know? Is he?
No, Amal has his hand up now too. Oh, there he is.
I've got Amal after Pedro.
Glenn, you're up.
Okay. I don't, the Northern African and Middle Eastern, they're trying now to change that on the census that they are white. Because if you go to Libya, Algeria, and other places in North Africa, the hue of the people is all the way from, dark ivory to an eggshell. So it's and also there are benefits in being a minority in America. It goes to minorities. They're cutting themselves out of those things. Now an African say he don't want to be associated with us, but when he sees the grants that African Americans can get, the different benefits that African Americans get, now he's an African American. So they want it both ways. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Glenn. Pedro. Pedro?
Yeah, thank you. Malcolm X said, the only thing power respects is power. And where does power come from? It comes mostly from wealth accumulation. And so does democracy. I mean, we're free to do whatever we want in this country, but when you say you're free to buy $100,000 Mercedes, who can afford it? only those with the power of wealth. And assimilation is perceived, I think, as a pathway to increase my chances of economic success. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what kind of system requires you to abandon your ethnicity to increase your chances of success? And this wealth accumulation thing, there's a lot of demonization of Russia and Putin well before the invasion. And at a geopolitical level, a lot of that has to do with the unipolar, position of the United States and the whole world being challenged by new countries such as Russia and China and such. So I just wanted to say that. And if I have a couple seconds, the biochemistry that makes up the human being is almost 100% exactly the same, regardless of color or skin. Whether it's like 98 to 99% exactly the same. We are all of the human race, and this social construct that Larry mentioned is so important to understand how oppression can pollute our chances to cohabitate the way we should. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Amal.
Yeah, this issue is a problem in the so-called Hispanic community as well. There's a young lady, her name is Amara La Negra, and she came out and started telling people that she was Afro-Latina. And everybody looked at her like, well, what does that mean? What is that? Because she didn't have the stereotypical look that we assume a Hispanic or Latino is supposed to have. She was an African woman. She just so happened to be a part of the wave of African people that was dropped off in Latin America, i.e. Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. She was Dominican. And she was just as dark as any Black woman you will see in the United States. And there were members of the Hispanic community who were much lighter than herself that said, no, she's not really Hispanic. But her parents are from the Dominican Republic, but they would not allow her to identify with who and what she really was, because she put Afro in front of the Latino title. So there were people who were trying to get this woman to disidentify as an African woman, a woman of African descent, because she didn't look like Jennifer Lopez or whoever else that we would consider a Hispanic woman. She didn't have that look, the phenotypical look, the stereotypical phenotypical look of what we think a Latina is supposed to look like. So this is a problem in Latin America as well. But then again, it's a problem all over the world, because if you go to the South Pacific where people are trying to get lighter.
Didi has a clarifying question.
Bill has his hand up.
Hi. That, I'm aware of that beautiful woman because she is quite lovely. In California, we've got a different culture over here, and interracial marriage is not an issue in California to speak of. And over here, there are a lot of very, very beautiful brown people that have that issue.
Or are you on the list? Did you want to be on the list, Didi? I'm sorry. Was that
And so I was just trying to give him the other side of the coin on that one, because in California, that's not an issue for us.
What's not an issue?
Her being Latino and being of African descent.
Oh, okay.
Because that's very, very common in California. We got some gorgeous people in California.
Okay.
do you want to get on the list though, Didi?
Yeah, I do have stuff that I did want to bring up on the list, but I could also wait until
I got
the
you.
roundup too, so it doesn't matter.
I'll put you on the list. So I'm just checking. Did Glenn have his hand up? Michelle?
I think he took it down.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
took it down. I thought I left my hand up, and that's what
Okay.
I pressed it
So
again.
then we've got Bill and then Dee Dee.
And now Marion.
Marion.
And Larry.
All this talk about anglicizing your names reminds me, we went to a restaurant in New Orleans, an Italian restaurant. It's spelled Sofia. We learned that it was dedicated to Sophia Loren. And when Sophia Loren started working in Hollywood, that was her spelling, which is the Italian spelling. But her people who were advising her said she should spell her name Sofia, which is the more English spelling of Sophia Loren. And so she did that. She thought that she would market better if she had that spelling in her name. And I didn't know that, but I learned it at the restaurant. But it's irony that people are trying to make themselves lighter, and whites are trying to make themselves darker. They're getting these suntans. And at work, there was a African-American man, and there was a white woman who would get very dark suntans, and she would come in and put her arm next to his to see who was darker. And it was kind of mocking the value you put on skin color. But it's not about any inherent characteristics of people. It's about the connotations we put on it. And so.
Thank you, Bill.
That's all.
So I have Dee Dee, Marion, and Larry, and I'm going to close the list unless there's someone with some burning comment they want to make, but you can maybe do that in the wrap up. So I've got Dee Dee, Marion, and then Larry. Dee Dee.
I wanted to, when folks came to this country, when they immigrated here in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, they came in through Ellis Island, and they were told in a lot of, depending on where they were from, but they were told in a lot of when they got here that their names were too hard to pronounce and they would give them another name. And so then people could talk to them, they could say their names, and they would work their way into society a little bit easier. That has always irritated me because that's taking away their culture. And the classic example of that was yesterday, I went into a nail salon to get a pedicure. And I'd never been in this nail salon before. And I wanted to get a pedicure. Well, in California, a lot of the nail salons are Oriental. And so this very kind gentleman sat me down and proceeded to, soak my feet and work on my feet. So I leaned over and I told him good morning, and I asked him what his name was. And in his best but very limited English, he told me his name was Truman. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I didn't really know him well enough, and he didn't know me, for me to ask him what his birth name was. But I know in the past, all of the folks that have obvious names that they weren't born with, I will ask them what their real name is. And I celebrate diversity. I look for diversity, and that's part of it.
Thank you, Didi. Marion.
I would like to share a story with you. Maybe Marva, Phyllis, and Nancy or Glenn have heard it, but I'll share it with my friends in other parts. I'm the mother of 3 grown children. Every time I would go for my pregnancy interviews, I'd have a discussion with the doctors and the people at the intake desk about my blood type. One young Black woman told me that I was mistaken when I listed my blood type. I'm O negative. She said, ma'am, you made a mistake when you wrote down your blood type. You listed yourself as having O negative blood. Only white people have O negative blood. I said, honey, you don't know your history and you don't know my history. I have O negative blood. The young lady went to one of the nurses, and then the nurse came out of one of the exam rooms and called me into the hallway so we could have a private conversation. And I had to tell the nurse, I said, ma'am, my blood type is O negative. And I don't see why I have to go into any big discussion as to why I have it. So I'm not going to get into a big discussion with you all right now because you know why I have O negative blood. I'm looking at a photo of my paternal grandfather, my father's father, who has blue eyes. When he was a young man, he had blonde hair, and he was married to my very chocolate brown grandmother. And that's why I look the way I look, but I have this O negative blood. I live in Louisiana, and that says a lot too. But every doggone time I went to when I was pregnant, I had this clashing about, I made a mistake with my blood type. It's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Marion. And Larry, that's good that you're going to be finishing up for us because you've been a stalwart with this in this discussion. So take it away.
Well, thank you. No, I just want to say when I was in high school in the 60s, there were some students who would get this, I think they called it Parson's skin tone cream, where they would walk around all day with this cream on their face and all night and sleep in it because they were trying to lighten their skin. Netanola skin tone cream, yeah, because they were trying to lighten their skin. Why? Because they were living in a culture that had indoctrinated them to believe that Black skin was just bad. It was just evil. It was inferior. And unfortunately, we go back to the Stockholm syndrome where a lot of Blacks have been psychologically ruined by wanting to be a part of this caste system instead of being who they are. We were told your nose too wide, your lips too big, and all of those negative things that were thrust upon us as kids. And some grew up fighting with that and psychologically dealing with that. Why is Kamala Harris called Black? Kamala Harris is no more Black, an Indian mother, a Jamaican father. Why can't she be Indian? Obama, African father, a white mother. Why is he classified as Black? Because of the 1-drop rule. If you got 1 drop of so-called Black blood, you can't be white because you would mess up the purity of the white blood system. And so we're fighting those battles still. And I'm a man of faith, but I don't have a lot of hope that they're going to end anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Perfect timing. Okay, so now we're going to go to the wrap up, and there were a few people, and tell me if I'm not wrong, but there were a few people that didn't speak at all. Nora, Marva, and Michelle. Is that all, or did I miss someone? Okay, so we'll go with
Cheryl. She's
Cheryl.
one of the people you
Cheryl.
can't see.
Yeah, I cannot see her. That's why. Okay, so we'll give those people 2 minutes, starting with Nora, if you want. You can pass, obviously, if you want.
All I want to say is this is just crazy making. And I wish, I naively wish that classifying people was just for the purpose of making sure everyone was represented, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Martha.
Good discussion. Very insightful. Great elder coach, Louise.
Thank you.
I enjoy each of your inputs, and I got good information from the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Marva. Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Louise, and you did a great job facilitating. I know you've done it in the past, but welcome back to the group. So thank you. I've enjoyed assisting you today too, and that has given me the opportunity to really just listen today. So I've appreciated that. I always enjoy all the insights, and as much of it as I've heard before, I always get little tidbits out of it, especially when I'm allowed like today to listen. And so I appreciate that opportunity, and thank you to everybody for sharing your stories as well. That's all.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Thank you for letting me listen to this discussion this morning. It was a great article, and I learned a lot, and just really appreciate being here. I don't know if it's this group, but it's so interesting. It pertains. I just picked up a book that I waited for at the library called White Lies. And it's a new publication that's about a gentleman that was a lead in the NAACP that led 2 lives, one in the North and one in the South. And he took advantage of passing, and I've just gotten started on it. It's a really good read. Just want to share that with everyone.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, so now everyone from now on will get just 1 minute or less. Glenn.
You say Glenn?
I did say Glenn.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed the conversation and learned from it, and thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Pedro.
Pedro.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, trying to find my mute button there. Sorry. Hey, so yeah, great discussion. Really, I think this issue of race is really a trigger for me. In the spirit of seeking to be more than non-racist, I think I seek to be anti-racist, and I bring up that biochemically that all humans are 98 to 99% exactly the same. That's why we are the same species. Okay, and so it points out that if only 1 or 2% is the difference that makes me allergic to peanut butter and you not, or someone black and someone white, then you can tell that this is in the service of a socially constructed deal to promote, the power and the wealth, disparity and stuff. And it's a shame that people's self-esteem is assimilated in a way that they seek to be part of a more dominant culture. Malcolm talked about conking hair and all that stuff that he went through in that transformation phase of his life. But anyhow, thank you very much, Louise, for a great article and great conversation.
Thank you, Pedro. Bill.
I agree with Nora. This whole discussion makes me crazy making. It's crazy making that we do, as Pedro said, we classify people based on 1% of their physiology. And speaking of whites wanting to be darker, the 45th president always wears orange makeup, which looks really stupid on him, but he's a pretty stupid guy. And my understanding is the concept of the white race didn't appear until the Middle Ages, and probably for political reasons. Thanks, Louise, for bringing this topic up, because it causes you to think through how we use race and ethnicity in this country in very negative ways for the most part. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Cindy. Cindy? Just walk through to the next room and use Bill's.
It's fine. There's an echo. This has been an interesting discussion. I wish we had the energy that we've spent on race in our country for other things. I was reminded when I was new to teaching, probably 40 years ago, in the school system, public school system, New Orleans, we had to keep a form. We filled it out the second week of October every year. And it's called Form 10, and it was required. You could not be sick on that day. And we had to categorize all of the children in our classes as male, female, white, black. And that went into, I think it had to do with legal suits about segregation. And so that went in, it was sort of the Bible of what was going on in terms of the legal system. After a few years, fortunately, it disappeared. I'm not sure the problems disappeared, but the forms disappeared, thankfully. We could do things like teach children, which is kind of what it was about. I would love to see us get rid of the energy spent on worrying about, paying attention to, or whatever. So as far as I'm concerned, people are people. I'm glad you're in this with me in this group, and we'll expand it. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Amal.
Yeah, this was a great article. I remember a long time ago, me and Luis used to have these type of conversations because she would tell me that her father was Egyptian and that her mother was from England. And I was saying, I would always tell her, well, in the United States, then you're not white. As much as you might, or people might look at you phenotypically, when you tell them where your father's from, that's going to change the way they see you. So, great article though, and a long overdue conversation. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Amal. Larry.
Let me first say hello to Amal, my old friend from days of old. I didn't recognize you by your new name until I saw your face, but good to see you. But I was riding in my car. My youngest grandson was driving the other day, and we came to a stop sign, and there was a white man there with a sign, you know, the homeless sign, the usual. I told my grandson, I said, give him $1. He said, no, I'm not. I said, why? He said, he's white. He said, he's part of the privileged class and he can help himself. So I said, oh, did you not think that white people can fall through the cracks? Do you not think that white people can go to jail and get a felony record where they can't get a job? Do you not think that white people could fall on hard times? And I started running it down to him. He said, okay, Grandpa, okay, I got it. So he reached in and gave him $1. And I'm saying that to say that this battle of race cannot be fought
until we take what is right home to our families, to our children, to our loved ones, and teach them to do what's right, because we're all human beings. Thank you. Great article, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for your participation. Francie.
Well, I don't have much to add. I'm just always amazed how pervasive race is in all. I'm just always amazed. Louise, it was like, hadn't really thought about people in North Africa. So thank you for the article.
You're welcome. Thank you, Francie. Phyllis.
Well, great first time, Louise. You handled it all very well. Congratulations. Looking forward to more of your facilitation. I would like to see what, especially those of us who are white, but not just those of us who are white, could do to really further anti-racism in this country, and how we can combat these kind of issues that are raised about how people are identified and how the identification then leads to their how they're treated in our culture. I know a couple of Algerians, one born and raised in France, who was kind of verbally assaulted and threatened because he was perceived as being a foreigner. And the other one joked, he's very light-skinned, the second one, joked once that he could be called African American because he's actually from the continent of Africa. And he did this where there were African Americans present, and they all looked stunned, and I just went like, no, honey, no. But maybe he could. But I think there's a difference between African American, African, and Black in how people I know identify themselves. So thanks again, Louise, and I look forward to more.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nancy.
Here we go. Thank you, Louise. It was a very good article. Really appreciate you. Had a great time. Great job at your first time facilitating, and look forward to more articles. You know, everybody kind of brings their own perspective when they facilitate, and look forward to more of that. I also want to take this opportunity to tell everybody I will not be here on April the 23rd because I have a fundraising event to do for NAMI, and I'll talk more about that next week.
Okay, thank you. I think I caught everybody. Did I? Is there anyone I missed?
Dee
Dee.
Oh, yes, sorry. I could have sworn I had you on my list. Sorry, Dee. Go ahead.
No problem, dear. I was amused, Marion, with your story because I'm O negative also. And my sister is AB negative. And we're from the era, we were in high school in the 60s when in science class we did blood typing. And when my slide came back negative and my sister's slide came back negative, they mysteriously disappeared. They took them. And we never knew why. It's just they did. And then they had a little chat with my mother. And our mom, you know, told us this is what happened. But I can identify with that because people do get upset, you know. And then when the Rogan shot, or the shot that knocks down the antibodies, when that came out, I was one of the first ones to get one. And, you know, that pretty much cleared up a lot of problems. When I read the article, I'm a little bit along the line of Nora. I'm like, what's the big deal? Put some more categories in the sensors and move forward and forget all of this stuff. bottom line is, I agree with Cindy. People are people, so leave it alone.
Thank you. So the worst part about being a facilitator, of course, is you can't comment as people are speaking. And I tried to, by the way, I did get everyone, right? That was everyone. Yes.
I think so.
And you can't rebuttal. There were so many things that I kind of jotted down here. And so I'm not going to be able to get them all. The heritage is a big part for me. I mean, I love Egypt. I've been there a few times. I love the Egyptian people. They're amazing. Their humor is fantastic. They're so generous. It's just a beautiful people. The food, everything is amazing. Their history. So yeah, I'm really into that. And Amal, when you said that, yes, if I tell people I'm Egyptian heritage, it will change. But yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, bring it on. Yeah, I'm happy to have that label, and it is a beautiful culture. And yes, of course, race is just a construct, isn't it? It's like we are. I mean, oh my God, I'm not making any sense here, am I, at all? I've got all of these little notes and garbled stuff. And yeah, by default, I get the privilege of being white because I look white. So yes, by default, I've been getting that privilege. I haven't seeked it out. It's just by being. And to be honest, coming over to America from England, people always just pick on the English part, the voice, the accent, whatever. You know, the Egyptian part is like a very small part of what people are interested in with me or comment on. So I guess the English part was, and my father, by the way, did change his name. His name is Aziz, what was Aziz Radwan, but he changed it to Jean-Pierre. He lived in France a little bit. And so, yeah, he wanted to be, but although you could tell his accent, he had an accent. As soon as he talked, someone was mentioning something about as soon as you talk, you could tell. You could tell he was not, certainly not French. And he wasn't English. You could tell he had an accent. Okay, I'm babbling on. Does anyone have any announcements?